Welcome back, aliens. My name is Davin Reddy, and in this video, let's try to write our first code in Cordapp. See, the thing is, we can write this code from scratch, or we can use some existing examples. Now, which should be the best approach? That depends. The only thing I felt is when you write a code from scratch, you might not be able to understand fully. And since it's not just about coding, right? It's also about the flow, it's also about the technology. So what we will do is let's try to use the existing code. So Cordapp provide you an example. Let's try to run that. Let's understand the code, overview of it. Will not be changing much in the code, but yes, we'll do some tweaks and let's see what happens. And then in the next video, we'll write a code from scratch, but that also depends, there's a terms and conditions here. We are working on a technology, right? It provides its own libraries, it provides its own template. So it's always better to start with that. We are not expert, right? We are learning coder here. So in this first step, we'll understand the basic example. And then in the next video, we'll write some code. Now, question arises from where you will get the code, right? Where you will get the example and where you will run this. You need certain tools and certain packages. So the first thing you need in your machine is an IDE where you can write a code. Now, which language you are going to use? We are going to use Java because Cordapp runs on JVM. So you can use Java, you can use Kotlin. Now, everyone knows Java, right? I mean, most of you know Java. We'll go with Java. If you are comfortable with Kotlin, you can choose Kotlin as an option. So basically, we need IntelliJ IDE. Of course, you can use your favorite IDE for that matter, but I will be using IntelliJ IDE, a community edition, basically. Then we also need Git because we want to get that package from the, of course, Git is optional. You can just download it and then you can import. But let's have Git in the system so that we can directly fetch. And you need Java, of course, right? We are saying we will be running this on JVM. Now, which version of Java it will support? It will support Java 8. Okay, so if you have any latest version, it might not work. I've not actually checked it on different versions, but the official documentation says right on Java 8. So we are doing that. If you have enough time, you can just try to run that on a different version. Now, for Java 8, you can use Oracle JDK, you can use Amazon Cordapp, or you can use Red Hat's OpenJDK when that works. So in this machine, I already have Amazon Cordapp, so I will be using that one. Now, once you have all these tools available with you, let's get started. So what we will do here is, first of all, let me open IntelliJ. Even before I open IntelliJ, I need that source package, right? Where I will get this, so you can just go to github.com, we'll give a slash and we'll say Cordapp. Now, this is the official repository for Cordapp on GitHub. It has so many repositories, you can just check them out. Few of them are famous because it's specifically made for tutorials or learnings, and it's highly recommended that you don't use these projects in the production. So which one we are going for? So we will be getting this samples Java as a repository. If you don't find this on the home screen, you can search here as well, samples Java, it should work. So this is what we're going to use in this video. In the next video, as I mentioned, we will be typing code, so we'll use this one. So let's use the samples Java. This is something we will be importing. So yeah, now how do you get this? So it's very simple. You go to code, copy this GitHub link, this URL, and we will fetch this in the system, right? So how will you do that? So you can open command prompt based on which OS you use. So I'm using Windows, so I will be using command prompt. But if you're using terminal on Mac or Ubuntu, it should work. Okay, so here let's create a directory first. Let me just move to desktop where I'm more comfortable, and let me create a folder. I will say workspace. Now in this, I will just navigate to workspace so that I can type. I can have everything in one folder, right? Okay, so in this workspace, let me get that project. Now, how will you get that? It's very simple. Using Git, you can say git clone, and you can simply paste the link. So when you say git clone and when you paste the link, and when you say enter, it will download the repository. Now, provided you have Git installed, okay, this will work only when you have Git installed and up and running. Okay, so let's say enter, and you can see it is downloading. It might take some time based on the internet speed. Okay, it's done. So we got the folder. Now where you will find it, let's go to desktop, and in the workspace you can see we have samples-java, and if you go inside this, you have so many folders. We have accounts, advanced, basic, and as name suggests, we will be going for basic because we are just getting started, right? Now in this basic, again, you have different examples. In this video, we are going to look at a Coda example. So let's use this Coda example, and what we will do here is let's open IntelliJ. Okay, so once you have your IntelliJ up and running, click on open. So let's navigate to desktop, workspace, and we'll select samples now. The problem is if you select samples, it will give you all this project. We don't want that. We just want one simple project, which is our Cordapp example. So let's select that and click on OK. Now when you do that, it will take some time if you're doing this for the first time. Now since I have already used it on this machine, it will be faster. Now why it will take some time is because, first of all, if you're using IntelliJ for the first time, it will load some settings, it will maybe download some, it will do some indexing. Now even if you have that, if you are fetching this code application for the first time, it needs tons of jar files. Okay, I know I'm exaggerating here, but it needs a lot of jar files and it will take some time to download them. It took me around 3 to 4 minutes for this machine to download all these jar files. You can see there are so many jar files here. Now how you will get all these jar files is thanks to Gradle. It has a script. You don't have to download them manually. We can just go to Gradle and it will automatically fetch all these libraries from the internet, whatever you have mentioned in the configuration. So when I say Coda has done that for us. Okay, but in case if it's not working, in case if you don't find these jar files on the left hand side or in the project area, you can simply click on this reload. It will reload all the jar files. Cool. Once you have your jar files ready with you, and yeah, so let's explore this. So we can see there are so many jar files and one of them will be important, the Coda one. Apart from that, you can see we have some Spring Framework jar files. Now, once you have those things with you, you can see there are so many folders. So what folders you have? So you have client, which deals with the client side. You have contracts and you have workflow. Now, if you remember the theory videos, we have talked about the flow. So when you have a transaction, when you want to follow the steps, when you want to automate them, you will be using these flows, where you will put your constraint, and for that you have contracts. So you can see we have contracts, and if I expand this, in this you have mentioned the contracts. Okay, so this is a file we want to work with. We'll explore them, don't worry. We'll do step by step. So basically what we are trying to achieve here. So the thing is, as I mentioned before, in the blockchain network, you can work with any use case. It can be used for healthcare, it can be used for supply chain, it can be used for asset management. So mostly it follows the logic of tokens, right? So it can be anything. It can be into supply chain, it can be healthcare records. So this application basically deals with IOU. So that's how you pronounce it, right? IOUs. So what it means is if you give money to someone else, so that the other person owes you some money, right? So basically you can think it as a loan, or you can think it as a bank. When you deposit money to a bank owes you money, right? So you can imagine that. So let's say if you deposit 1,000 rupees, so that will be your token. That can be your one token, right? So this is that application. So here we have multiple parties. So you can imagine we have three parties: party A, party B, and party C. Now party A wants to transfer some money to party B, right? So we can create an IOU there. Okay, that makes sense. So that's a token, you can imagine, just to keep things simple. So party A sends some money to party B. Now there's a transaction between only these two parties, right? So party C should not be able to see data. That's what we want to explore. Because in theory, we have talked a lot about privacy. Do you really get that? That's what we want to see. Now, apart from these three parties, we also need a notary. Remember, we need to achieve the consensus, which is the uniqueness consensus. And to achieve that, we need to use a notary. So in this example, when you run this, you will be getting multiple nodes. Of course, you have party A, party B, party C. But as per the documentation, it says it has party C. But when I was running this, I only saw 2. So we'll solve that as well. So basically, we got 3 parties and a notary. Now, how do we run this? We'll look at the code, but let's see the output and then we'll see the code, what is happening. So to do this, first you have to deploy these nodes. Okay, to deploy the nodes, you can see we have a script. So if you go to build Gradle, this is where you have mentioned all the versions or all the packages you need. But if you scroll down, there's a task called deploy nodes. Okay, this is how you configure the nodes. So whatever nodes are mentioned here will be deployed on the platform. But if you can see, we only have 2 nodes. So that's why if you deploy this, you will only get 2 nodes. Let's try that. How do we deploy this? So if you want to run a task in Gradle, it's very simple, depending upon which OS you're working with. So if you're using Windows, you just have to say gradle.bat deploy node. Okay, this is how you do this in Windows. But if you're doing this on Mac or Linux, you have a different command. You can see that on the screen. So let's enter this and it will take some time to deploy, and based on your system configuration, it will take some time. It is a CPU intensive task. Okay, so if you can observe, it says generating node directory for notary for party A and party B. So basically it's not dealing with party C. It should, right? So what we can do here is, let's stop this. Okay, so I've stopped the process. What we'll do is, let's copy this. So you can see we have party A from London. Then we have party B from New York, US. So let's create one more node. I will just copy this and paste it here. So the third party, let's say party C, and party C is from Mumbai, and I will say India country. Okay, but then we have to change some other things as well. So you can see it's peer-to-peer, right? So we have to mention that port as well. So it's taking 5. Here we have 8 for B, and we have, let's make it 11 for C. Then we are changing the address. This is the RPC settings. So address will make it, oh, this was 6. We don't need to change that. This is 9. Let's make this as 12. Okay, and then we have to also change the admin address for this one. Let's make it 52. So we're just making sure we have a gap of 3. Anything else? I think that's it. Let's save this. Now this is not the only place we have to change it. We have to also change it in the client. This is where you will run this, right? So you can see we have a server port number for 2. We need to have one more, and this will be 7. To access that, we need one more port number, right? And this will make it, it was 12, right? The RPC port number, if you remember. Okay, that's it. Once you do this, it should be able to work now. So what we'll do, we'll go back to terminal. We'll execute the same command, deploy nodes. And when you say enter, this time it will build, okay, I was supposed to say it will build 3, but there is an issue. Okay, I was supposed to change the runtime. Okay, it's in the issue is in the client. Oh, my bad. So it should be C, right? Runtime party. My bad. After that, let's run this again. Okay, so it says generating node directory for party A, party B, and party C. This is what we wanted, right? So in total, we got 4 nodes in the network. Notary, as usual, it's very important. Then we got 3 other parties who will be doing transactions. So it might take some time. Okay, done. So it says it has created these 4 nodes. Now where you will find this directory, so if you go to build and if you click on nodes, you can see we got directories for the 4 nodes, and these are the configuration. And this is how, this bat file, this is how you run these nodes. Okay, you don't have to manually run one by one, but you can run this node with this script. And for Mac OS and Linux, you can use this one, this file. Okay, looks cool, right? So we are able to deploy the application. The next step would be to run this. Now, how do we run this? So when you say you have 4 nodes, you need to have 4 different terminals, right, to access them. So do we have to open those terminals by ourselves? Not exactly, since we, as I already mentioned, you have this script which will do that. So how do we run this? It's very simple. Again, for Windows, you have to say call build nodes. That's where you have nodes. And the file name is run nodes.bat. That's it. If you do this, it will run 4 terminals. I hope it will give you 4 terminals. Sometime it gives issue, that's fine. You can just restart the process. Sometimes it does only 2 or 3. And okay, so this time as well, it is only opening 2. So don't worry, if that is the case, close this and reopen. This time we got, this time we got 4. Perfect. So this is 1, this is 2nd, and this is 3rd. Basically, we got 4 terminals here. And the best thing is, whenever you run Corda, you will get a joke here, some funny line. So you can see whenever I go near my bank, I get withdrawal symptoms. Okay, it runs on the JVM because Quick Basic is apparently not professional enough. Okay, that was good. That was good. So we are waiting for these 2 ports to start. They are still waiting for something. Not sure what. If this doesn't work, we'll have to do that one more time. There might also be chance that these 2 ports are busy. Is that it is waiting for? I'm not sure. So what we do is let's try this once again. Okay, this time 3. Okay, so this time everything is working. So I'm still looking for a solution for this, why it doesn't work in the first instance, but every time I do this, sometime it gets stuck, sometime it happens. If you know the solution, let me know in the comment section why it is happening. Okay, so let's go for another joke here. I won 3 million on the lottery, so I donated a quarter of it to charity. Now I have, okay. So once we have this running, so this is how you can control your nodes. This is how you can pass commands. Yeah, so we need to run 3 different servers here. Now how will you do that? Now if you remember, we have in the client script, we have mentioned these 3 party servers, right? We got party A, party B, party C. Okay, so let's come back here and let's run these servers. So it's very simple again, Gradle, that's the command you have to use, Gradle w .bat, and let's run the particular server. So we'll say party A server. This will run party A. Let's say enter. So it is running party A. Let's open another terminal. Let's write the same thing. And another terminal. Okay, so basically we are running these 3 servers and they are up and running. You can see this server started at 5006. So this is how you can access them with the help of localhost. So we got party A on 5005. We got party B on this port number and party C on this port number. Now how will you verify that? It's very simple. Just open your browser and say localhost : 5005. You can see this is your party A interface. Of course, we don't have a good client view, so we are going for the whatever is available. So this is the party C, party B, and this is your party C. So this is how they can access them. So the server is running behind the scene, and the way you can access that is with the help of this one. Now with this, you have some endpoints. So basically, you can have an endpoint as me. So you can see if you run this on party C, you got the information about party C here. So party C from Mumbai, and this is the country. The same thing can be done with party B as well, right? You got the point, right? You can try this on party A as well. So there are a lot of endpoints available. Now where you will find this endpoint, so if you go to client SRC Java web server controller, this is where it specifies all the, so it will specify all the endpoints, right? So we tried me. We can also check the status of the server. Then we can find the identities. Let's try identities and let's see what it returns. Let's do that on A. Okay, so again the same thing, it returns the identity of the particular server. We can run peers. It will return, I guess it will return all the peers in the network. So we'll say peers. You're right. So you can see it mentions the other peers. It mentions party B and party C. Why not party A? Because we are running this on party A. So that's something we can understand, right? So it shows all the other peers. It also defines the data about notaries. So it's not compulsory that you will be having only one notary in the network. You can have multiple notaries. So if you say notaries, it will specify which server is a notary. So as of now, notary is also in London. Okay, that's fine. We have, so we can have multiple notaries. What else we have? We can fetch all the states. I guess it will be empty as of now. Yeah, states is empty because we have not done any transaction, right? Then we have tried me. We also have IOUs. Now IOUs is all the IOs the party A knows. Okay, now there's a difference, right? So let's say there's an IOU between party A and party B. So if you run IOU here, it will only show the IOUs known by party A. If you do the same thing on party C, it will give you empty. Okay, so if you're getting confused, don't worry. Once we run this example, you will get to know what I'm talking about. Okay, this makes sense, right? We got all these options. Now, but how do we create IOU? You can see that on the screen, right? So we have create IOU option, but this is not a get request. All the others are get request, right? So we are fetching those data. This time we are using post because we are creating data. So this data will be stored on the ledger, right? By default, the ledger is empty as of now. So let's create one IOU. Now, how will you do that? So first of all, you need to have a client interface. You can use Postman. You can use, since we don't have a form created, in the web page, we can use curl as well. So we'll use curl and we use this option. We are creating a post request. Now which URL we are trying to hit is, this is for the A, party A, right? So party A is on localhost colon 50005 and we are creating an IOU, but then you have to specify the values as well, right? Now what values I'm talking about? So let's go to our IOU. What are the things it needs? So if you look at contracts, and in contracts you have SRC, in SRC we have main, you can see we have states, right? So one state represents one type of data. Example, we are talking about IOU. So what IOU should have? It should have a value, what amount you want to send, who is the lender, who is the borrower, and this is a party, right? And then every state will have an ID. Okay, so we have to mention these things as well. So we'll go back here, we'll mention IOU value. Let's say I want to send $99. And here we'll say, we want to specify the party name as well. So party name is actually O and party. So we want to do it for party B, right? So we are lending money to party A is lending money to party B. So I have to mention the receivers or borrowers name here. So we have to mention the entire stuff, location, New York, right? But then there's a space in New York. So we'll say %20. And we'll mention the country as, what's the country? It's US. Right, once you mention that, let's also add some headers. So let's mention the content type as, okay. Now I know it's a bit string, but if you do this on your client application, maybe Postman, you don't have to type everything here. But yeah, so for this, let's type this and let's say enter. Now by doing this, it will create a IOU. It might take some time because it is executing multiple steps there, right? So you can see we got a transaction ID and it is getting stored on the ledger. That's great. So we got our IOU state where the value is 99, the lender is party A, and the borrower is party B, and this is the lender ID. Cool, right? But then how will you see this? Okay, that's a tricky point, right? It is saving the ledger. So the way you can do that is, remember, IOUs, this time when you say enter, you have not got empty array, you got the actual data. The JSON, which mentioned everything. It mentions what's the value. It mentions the lender, borrower, linear ID, and yeah, it mentioned the transaction hash as well. This is very important for verification. But if I do this on party B, what do you think? Will it work? So even before running this, comment your answer. Will this work? Will this show the data? And the answer is yes, of course, right? The data need to be distributed on both the nodes because both belongs to this particular transaction, party A and party B both. How about party C? What's your guess? So before continuing, tell me in the comment section, will party C able to see the data? And the answer is no. It's because the transaction is happening between party A and party B. Party C will not get to see the data, and that's what we say we are achieving privacy. Okay, so basically we know that we can execute a transaction or we can send a IOU from party A to party B with the help of the Spring Boot server which we use. So basically hitting the endpoint, it is creating a transaction for us and then everything was working, right? And one thing to observe when you do a transaction between A and B, C was not able to see the transaction, right? So not just C, it is also Notary. So if you do the same thing with the Notary, even Notary don't have the access to see that data. So only A and B can see it. So that works, right? But what if you want to do the same thing with the help of a flow? Now, if you remember, if you look at the code here, so let's go back to the code. Now, this is a flow which we are talking about. So what if I want to execute a transaction, but with the help of a flow? Now, in that case, you will be using a flow initiator, which will initiate a flow, and then this will be responded. So let's say we have two parties, party A and party B. So party A will initiate and party B will respond. Now where you will find this? So if you go back to your workflows, so that's your file, which is example flow. Right now in this example flow Java file, we have two classes. I mean, in fact, we have two static classes. We have initiator, and if you go down, you'll also be having responder. You can also have this in two different files. Okay, perfectly works. Okay, so we don't have a name responder here. They have acceptor, but that's fine. Both have the same thing. What's important is the responder or the acceptor class will be having an annotation called initiated by, and the initiator will have a annotation which is initiating flow, because this is something you will initiate, and then initiating flow will be calling the responder or acceptor flow, and we want it to be called with the help of RPC, and that's why we are saying studyable by RPC. Okay, so how do you execute this flow? Now if you don't want to use a client application, if you don't want to use Spring Boot server, how do you do that? So for this we'll use our command. So this time we'll send from, again let's do it from A to B itself. So I have restarted the server. I guess it's empty. So let's do it from A to B again. So this is A and this is B on this side. Now how do you initiate a flow? Now for that, first of all, well, let's check by doing a flow list. Now when you say flow list, it will give you all the flows in your application. So if you say enter, you can see we have all these flows. Now this is a flow which we are talking about, the example flow. But in this example flow, we have two flows. This is just a class. Initiate is a flow, right? So that's an inner class, so that's how we represent it. Now with this flow, let's initiate a transaction. Now to do that, we will be saying flow start, and then we'll use a file name which is example flow. We'll use a dollar, and then we'll mention the flow name which is initiator in this case. Okay, and then we'll pass the value which is IOU value. Let's do a transaction of again 99. I hope that works, and make sure that you put a space in between, because when I was trying this for the first time, I forgot to put a space and then it was giving some weird errors. It took me some time to solve that. Okay, so we'll say party, other party. Again, we will give a colon and space and then mention the party name. Now in this case, the party is, let's say O is equal to party. Again, we are going for party B, and then party B is from New York. Now this time we don't have to give a %20 in between, because we are executing this on a command line. Initially, it was done on the server, on the as a browser request, right? So browser doesn't work with spaces, so you have to put some special symbol there. And then we'll give a comma. We'll say country is equal to US, and that's it. This should work. If you enter this, you can see we got the steps. It says starting, generating transaction based on your IOU, verifying contracts transaction. So there are so many steps here. It is doing. These are the same steps which we have seen in the theory, right? So it will start the transaction, it will generate a transaction based on the IOU, verify the constraint, then sign by your own private key. Then you have to wait for others to sign, verify the signatures, get the notary signature, and done. Everything is done, right? So this is working. Now how do you verify this on a command line, right? Since we are executing a flow on command line, we also want to see the data on the command line. To do that, we can say run vault query, contract state type. Then you have to mention your file name, which is net.corda. I guess it is in samples.examples.states. I hope is that. And then you have to also mention your class name, which is IOU state. So basically, we have to pass the fully qualified class name here, and it should work. Let's say enter. Oh, we got an error. We missed something here. Is it the wrong file we have? Okay, let's verify what's the file name actually is. So if you go to IOU state, the class name is IOU state, .net.coda.samples.o. Okay, so I have added extra S. So from this example, this is the extra. Let's say enter. And you can see we got the transaction. This is a transaction which we saw in the browser as well. And yes. So this is the first transaction from A to B. The same code can be executed on the B, party B, right? So let's copy this. Let's go to party B and execute the same thing. And of course, you will see the transaction. If you do the same thing on party C, is this party C? No, this is party A. This is notary. This is party C, let's say. And you can see party C don't know about any transaction, even notary is empty. So that's the beauty of how do you execute this on a command line. And that's the beauty about Corda. Now let's look at the code, how all this thing works. So if you go back to your example flow, let's try to understand the code a bit. So what exactly is happening? So whenever you initiate a flow, it will execute the statements, right? So we have two things, a value and another party. Now, why not the party which is sending it or the lender? So this is actually a borrower. Where's the lender? So lender is initiating a transaction, right? So from this transaction, you can get the current party. and you can get that because the current party is executing it. And then we have certain steps here. Now the progress tracker here is actually used to maintain the progress, what is happening. Now this will be helpful when you know that this process will take some time and you want to serialize it and all those stuff. Okay, so we got the constructor. Simple thing to understand. Important is here. Now whenever you want to do all these things, it will do a call, and on this call what will happen? So first it need to get the notary. Now these things are important when you go for the next video. In the next video we'll write this code, right? So it is important to understand that here, so that when I write a code, it will make much more sense. So first you have to get the notary. Then you need to get the current party. Of course, right, we have declared the other party, but what about the current party? So you can say get our identity. So the current party who's executing this transaction is me. You can say lender as well. Then you have to create a IOU state, which is a new output actually. So this will be done with the help of a value which you want to send, the lender, the borrower, and the unique ID. Remember we have talked about unique ID there. So every transaction or every state will have a unique ID to refer to. And then we need a command. Now if you remember in the theory we have talked about it, every transaction needs a command to show the intention. Now once you have your party, your output state, your notary, and your command ready, it's time to build a transaction. To do that we have a transaction builder. You can create an object and you can pass this to data, which is the output state and the command. Now one thing to observe, with your output state you have to also mention the contract, because a state belongs to a contract. Now where do we do that? So if you go to IOU state, can you see that on your class name it says belongs to contract? So a state and a contract, they are linked. So why do we need that? Because every time you change a state, it will verify some constraints. Those constraints are mentioned in the contract. So once you do that, it's important to also verify. Now what verify will do is, if you go to IOU contract, you can see this class has a very important method called as verify. So once we do it by step, when we write a code, you will understand the flow. In this example, let's try to remember some terms and some flows. So we have verify. In this verify, you have to verify the transaction. So you have to verify the constraint. The same thing we'll be using in the next video, right? So you can just remember that. So what are the constraints we have here? The constraint is there should not be any input consumed. There should not be more than one output. Okay, why we are saying there should not be any input consumed is because we are creating an IOU. So when you create something, you're not consuming the old one, right? And then you have to make sure that the lender and borrower are not same. You have to make sure that you got all the signatures, and that's it. And the loan, of course, should be more than 0. So you can mention all the constraints in this. If this is passing, so how do you know it is passing? Is this verify will check all these things here. Now see, the code which we can see here is actually a DSL, which is a domain specific language for Cordapp. Now when we write a code, we'll write our own Java logic, okay, just if conditions, but you can also use DSL. It is easy because in DSL you don't have to throw the exception. So what happens is, if this case is passing, if this condition is passing, nothing will happen. But what if this condition fails? In this case, it will throw the exception. You can see that it says it will throw illegal argument exception. So if everything is good, there will not be an exception. It will be smooth. But what if the condition fails? In that case, it will throw the exception. And that's how you know some constraint is not matching, right? If everything is good, it will go ahead. It will sign the transaction. It will wait for others to sign the transaction. If everything is good, it will do the finality. Now, what are things? So this is the initiator, right? But what about the responder? The responder has to sign. But before signing, the responder will check for certain things. Example, responder wants a loan of $1,000 and you are giving only $100 as a lender. Of course, the borrower will not accept it. Borrower will put that in the conditions, that this is my condition. If I'm asking for 1,000, I want at least more than $900. So in that case, if it is matching, it will sign the transaction. Otherwise, it will give exception. If everything is good, the data is saved on both the machine ledger. In fact, not just these two. What if we have more parties in the transaction? That it will be stored there as well. Yeah, that's it. That's the flow. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comment section and do subscribe for further videos. Bye-bye.